Hello, everybody. Welcome. I can see people start to pop in and join us. Just to confirm that you are in the right place. This is CalSOAP's webinar on understanding your college's financial aid offer. So probably most of you are 12th graders or staff or parents and guardians who work with 12th graders. And today we're going to be talking about as your college admissions offers letters start coming to you this spring to let you know which universities you may be accepted to. Another step that comes after that is figuring out your financial aid. And so after the admissions process, there's the financial aid process. But sometimes if you are not, this might be the first time you're doing this type of thing, and it can be a little bit difficult and overwhelming understanding what are these numbers? What does this mean? What is the bottom line? So we're going to try to address all those things today. We are recording this, and so on the CalSOAP website, calsoapsandiego.org, starting tomorrow, we will also have this recording available so that you can go back or share it with somebody else in the family if you would like to, and you can go back and view it again. So we will have this. It's being recorded now, and it'll be available at the CalSOAP website beginning tomorrow. Another note is that although you won't be able to type into the chat, you can type into the Q&A. So at the bottom of your Zoom, you'll probably see a Q&A button, and that's where you can type a question, and I will do my best to answer you. And also I will bring up any questions to our speaker that I possibly can, although we're going to try to hold most questions until the end, but we will have time at the end for your individual questions, and we are interested in seeing what you want to know. So I'm going to get started by introducing our speaker for today. Her name is Bronwyn Garrison. She is the Assistant Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships, specifically at UC San Diego. So the information she's going to be giving you is going to have a little bit of a UCSD flavor to it. However, she's very knowledgeable about the world of financial aid in general. And so we will be kind of using UCSD as a model of this is what, our financial aid award letters look like. You might be getting a slightly different one from other colleges depending on who you're hearing from, but it's really good to hear from a real financial aid officer at a real university who deals with this kind of thing and is very familiar with the packages. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Bronwyn Garrison, and she's going to take us through the slide deck. Thank you so much, Bronwyn.
Thank you, and it's great joining you this evening. We have, as mentioned, it sounds like we've got some close to graduating high school seniors and families and other folks joining us. So thank you for having me this evening to speak to understanding your college financial aid offer. Okay, so in terms of understanding your financial aid offer, I'll start by talking, and again, this is going to be specific to my experience at UC San Diego, but a lot of this information is going to apply to other schools as well too in the process. So I hope you find this information useful. So today I'll be talking about how to understand your financial aid offer. We'll start with an introduction to financial aid, talk about some college costs that will be coming up soon, what to expect when you receive a financial aid offer, and the types of financial aid you may be offered as part of your financial aid offer. Finally, we'll put it all together for you to help you hopefully understand how to navigate the process and from there make the best decision for you on where you would like to attend. Okay, so introduction to financial aid. So really the goal of financial aid is to help promote access and choice. So regardless of your income status, your background, you are able to choose the school that works best for you regardless. Also financial aid, and while money and costs are a big factor in these decisions, it's not the only factor in your decision as well too in attending school. So that's part of why that financial aid offer there is to help you put that picture together. So accessing funds to help families pay for lots of different types of schools for your public, private colleges, our really great community college system in California, and other community colleges, private career colleges. So really coming back down to the information, giving you the information that you need to help support your choice. So choice among schools is not just being about what is the least expensive, but what meets your academic needs, cultural, social fit. So definitely a lot of factors to consider, but financial aid is part, definitely no question, part of that process and paying for school. So the first step, which you may have heard of, and definitely in the news a little bit, is how to apply for financial aid. So the general process for UCs, for CSUs, for community colleges is that first step of completing the 2024-2025 FAFSA or completing the DREAM Act application. So definitely that or we wanted to emphasize right there. For this year, in the past, usually the FAFSA and DREAM Act application is available in the prior October. But with all the changes in the application that have gone into place this year, the application was primarily released for a few hours at the end of December, but then going into January as well too, and is available right now. So if you're looking to file that FAFSA, that free application for federal student aid, so you shouldn't have to pay to submit your application, you would need to ensure that you're a US citizen, a permanent resident. Those would be students who are eligible to file FAFSA. And we do have the link right here, fafsa.gov. But if you Google FAFSA, if you go to studentaid.gov, it's going to all direct you to the federal student aid website to file. And the other option, if you're not eligible to file FAFSA, is the DREAM Act application. So if you are a non-documented student who's eligible to file as AB 540 status student, and there's more information on the website here, you would want to go ahead and file that DREAM Act application. And that's for consideration for state and generally institutional funds. Now, for UCs, the UC system, the general priority filing deadline to make sure that you're considered for the maximum in any institutional grant that you're eligible for is March 4th. So different schools have different priority deadlines for their own funds. So something I would recommend is checking out, and I'll probably mention this a couple of times in the presentation, is checking out the website, specifically the financial aid website for the schools that you applied for, to see if there's any updates or any priority deadlines that could impact your financial aid eligibility. So first step, filing the FAFSA. Something to note as well as other schools sometimes have supplemental forms or applications for financial aid eligibility. Again, that's where checking out the financial aid website at those schools is important, just to see if there's any other forms that you do need to complete. Okay, so financial aid process. Again, I mentioned this specific to UCs, but for the UC side, FAFSA and DREAM Act application is available, or the priority filing deadline that we have published as of now, so I don't know if there'll be any changes at any point, is March 4th. So if you haven't already, you want to go ahead and file FAFSA or DREAM Act application. And it's for applying for, you want to go, it says apply for colleges, but at this point, a lot of the different schools applications have closed. But if you have already, you want to make sure the two things is applying for the college, but then applying for the FAFSA or DREAM Act application to be considered for financial aid. And here we say, when you receive an admission offer, you will also receive a financial aid offer. So just to address almost sort of the elephant in the virtual room about the FAFSA coming out later than usual, schools are very much aware of these changing timelines. It's been publicly published as of this evening, specifically for the UCs, and I want to say the CSUs as well, is that the commitment deadline, the deadline once you're admitted and deciding as a first year if you're coming to school or not and submitting that commitment, is moved to May 15th. So usually it's May 1st, but because of these FAFSA delays, leadership at different school systems, UCCSUs across the state are very much aware that this knowing your financial aid offer is a key component in helping make your decision on which school that you're planning to attend to. And we have been advised by the Department of Education schools aren't going to receive financial aid applications probably until mid March, and then continuing on through the end of April. And when schools receive it, it does take time to generate a financial aid offer. Definitely a lot of important information, and we want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. So it's possible that at your time of admission, you may not have your financial aid offer at the exact same time, but don't, and this being kind of an unusual year, that doesn't mean that your application won't be received by your school and they're not going to get an offer out. The goal of, I know for our office and for other financial aid offices too, is to make sure prior to that decision date that you get an offer of your financial aid based on a completed application to see what your options are. So that's our goal. That's what we're moving towards. So generally you're admitted, and around that time or potentially after, in this case, potentially for this year, that's when you would receive your financial aid offer based on that completed financial aid application. And a term that I know our campus uses, it's used at a federal level, is a college financing plan, or I'll mention CFP. It might be different from school to school, but I know at our campus and other campuses as well too, we use a federal template that's provided by the Department of Education, with a similar formatting, which is useful in that you can compare offers between schools, and it's definitely helpful having the same format to compare. But there's certain components that I'll talk about in just a minute that you'll see similarities between schools and how they generate financial aid offers, and to help you compare the two. Okay, so moving ahead, I'll be talking about everyone's favorite subject, the cost part. So considering each school's cost of attendance. So right here on this screen, this is based on, I want to say it's 2023, 2024 figures, because final costs are still being put together. I know on our side, there's a lot of different factors. But as part of your admission offer, you should see what the cost is going to be. So this is just some examples based on prior year figures. Kind of going back to what I said earlier about checking out the websites of your schools, in terms of those direct costs, the tuition and fees. Generally, schools charge per quarter or semester. Financial aid offers are completed annually based on annual costs for a year at school, generally. Usually schools would have their registration fees posted on their website. So that's a good resource to check out. They might not be available and finalized right now, but at the time of admission, the expectation is that will be available for you to view, and helping determine what those direct tuition and fees costs are. So definitely school is more than costs of tuition and fees. There's other costs that go along. Some of them are some terms you may see are direct costs and indirect costs. Either way, it's money that you're paying while you're going to school. So there's things such as, obviously get the tuition and fees. So generally, I know at my campus at UC San Diego, these are assessed directly to students' accounts. The tuition and fees in this case, for each quarter. And then also there's room and board or housing. Housing and meals is the term that you'll see moving ahead. But housing and meals can be direct costs if you live on campus at, say, UC San Diego. Then those housing fees are posted directly to your student account. So those are direct costs. However, there are other indirect costs. For example, if you decide to live off campus, then your costs, even though there's a overall estimated cost of attendance, what you actually pay will be based on your rent and your lease and what you're paying through there. It's an indirect costs in that it's not charged by, in this case at UC San Diego, by the university. Then there's other costs as well too, books and supplies, which vary from class to class. I was an English major, I had to buy a lot of books. So depending on your class, you might have to buy a textbook for it. It's not a set amount, at least at UC San Diego, that you're billed. Transportation, if you are living on campus, there's still a transportation part of your cost of attendance. If you're living off campus, you have to have a way to get to campus. So that's a consideration. And then other personal expenses too. So, sorry, I'm just going to go back one more slide. But so just in summary, there's a lot of costs while you're at school to consider, ones that you'll be billed, but then others that come up during the time you're at school. And we'll talk about in a couple of slides how this factors into how we offer financial aid. So types of financial aid. There's many different types of financial aid that you may see on your financial aid offer. So I'm going to talk about them a bit here. Here we have financial aid, quote unquote, gift aid, free money. So this is money that, if you see the terminology on your offer, grant or scholarship, it's not money. As long as you are eligible initially, you don't need to pay this money back. It's not like a loan. It's money that that is to use to help meet your costs. So generally, I know at UC San Diego, when your financial aid, when you're given your financial aid, it goes towards initially your balance due for each quarter. Other schools are similar, or they may opt to issue you the money directly to pay your balance. But grants, there's different types. There's federal grants. So if you filed a FAFSA, if you're eligible, you may see mention of a federal Pell Grant. There's also state grants, which based on your FAFSA or DREAM Act application. The Cal Grant is one you may see, or also the middle class scholarship is one. And then individual schools might have their own money where they can offer institutional grant money. So you may see that as well in offers, something specific to the campus that you're applied for in their offer. So the names, you may see a Pell offer on all your offers from different schools, but the name of the institutional grant may be different. So, but that's terminology that you will see, and it's from different sources: federal, state, institutional, and then scholarships as well too. We have here awarded from a donor. At UC's, your admission application usually acts as your scholarship application for your first year, but scholarships can be from multiple sources as well too. It can be something local to your high school that you were awarded or offered, or something from from the university or institution that you're going to be attending. Okay, another term you may see as well too is work study. So unlike a loan and unlike grants and scholarships, it does work differently. It's kind of in summary, it's a way for you to earn this work study fund while you're in school. So generally you would, if you see a work study offer in your financial aid offer, and when you see your financial aid package, I know for our campus, we put out offers initially, and then we send out information about requirements that you'll need to complete. And then we post the package in an online portal for you to review, to accept, decline. But work study, unlike other funds, is you would get a job either working on or off campus. And if your employer is a work study employer, rather than paying your full paycheck every 2 weeks out of their pocket, they'll be pulling on these funds. And it could be federal, it could be institutional work study money. But the intention is that while you're working, you're initially your focus is being a student while you're at school. So your employer the intention is that your employer would work around your school schedule. Also, it's a great initial employment experience as well too, if you haven't worked before, and a way to gain contacts as well across campus. And on a side note too, from my experience, you don't necessarily need work study in order to work. I worked a non-work study position while I was at school to help get money to pay rent. But it is definitely a source, and there's advantages to that as well too. So, work study, you won't get a set amount every year or every quarter. It's going to be earned based on your paycheck and your wages that are made. So that's something, a term that you may see on your financial aid offer. And then we have the financial aid loan component. So you will likely see terms on your financial aid offer, potentially federal, there's student loans, so federal subsidized or unsubsidized loans, possibly a combination of both. Parent Plus loan is potentially an option to help meet costs. Unsubsidized and plus loans, term we use is that it's non-need based, and we'll talk about need versus non-need in a couple of slides here. But loans are an option to help meet with the costs of going to school. It isn't necessarily you would have to take the full amount out, but it is an option to help meet with those costs. Generally, repayment begins 6 months after you're no longer enrolled. Usually, it's once you've graduated. If you're taking out a loan, generally, your school will let you know when you can start accepting loans. I know for our campus, when we put our initial offers for admitted students, you won't be able to accept your loans right away. What we'll do is we'll notify you once you're able to log in and start accepting loans. And generally, you can accept them throughout the year as well too. But it is specific to year as well. So subsidized means that the government takes care of the interest while you're in school, and unsubsidized means the interest starts accruing once the loan disperses to your student account. So that's probably the big difference, but you will probably see that terminology on financial aid offers as well. And schools would have more information as well too about the loan process on their financial aid websites as well too. Okay, so kind of circling back again to the cost of attendance. Every school will have a cost of attendance, so it isn't necessarily how much you're going to be billed. You won't see, in this case, we have an example of UC San Diego from I think it's from the 2023-2024 academic year. In this case, it's for the 9 months of the academic year. So we have our fall quarter, winter quarter, and spring quarter. So one way to look at this is to split it into thirds for fall, winter, and spring. But any schools that you're looking at, if it's a semester, you'd cut it in half by 2. But this information should be readily available for the current school year, or and then once it's available for the upcoming school year, when offers go out for those schools. So again, kind of looking at this, you want to consider those tuition costs. So there's those direct costs, those things you'll be billed. So for example, in this situation, we have the tuition and fees. And depending on your housing status or where you live, if you're living on campus, off campus, living with parents, that can impact the amount of your costs as well too. So generally, I know for our campus, it costs more to live on campus. But as you can see, we have the different amounts that are listed for the 9 months of the school year. But ultimately, depending on which housing plan you go with, if you're living on campus, that will determine what your actual costs are, what you're going to be billed. Then we have our books, courses, materials, supplies. So that will really vary. The amounts that are used in the cost of attendance generally stay the same in terms of how financial aid is determined. So if you went with a more expensive or least expensive plan, it's not going to impact generally the cost of attendance that's used to determine your financial aid eligibility. So definitely you can kind of see what the differences are. At no point would you be billed a miscellaneous personal expense, but this information is used to determine the type of financial aid that you're eligible for while you're in school. Okay, so financial need, that was a term I kind of mentioned before. So the way that you'll likely see your financial aid breakdown on your financial aid offer from the school that you're planning on attending. And the way that we generate financial aid offers generally is we take that estimated cost of attendance. So from that prior slide, you can see the amounts at the bottom. We have it split into California residents and then non-residents for tuition purposes as well, because it does cost more if you're a non-resident attending campus. Oh, sorry about that. We take that estimated cost of attendance, then we subtract out the student aid index. So assuming that you're new to this process, this is a new term. It used to be called expected family contribution, but the SAI, or the student aid index, is a number that's generated based on the information that's entered onto the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application. So it's not an amount that you'll be billed, not an amount you'll be necessarily expected to contribute, but it's used to determine, the type of financial aid you're eligible for. And then we subtract out other financial assistance. So if you're receiving money, say a scholarship from an outside awarding or an outside our campus, but from another organization, then that's subtracted out. And then that leaves a term or that you may see as see on your offer is financial need. So just looking at this formula, you can kind of see the higher student SAI is, then the less your financial need is. So financial need, what I guess the question is, what falls under financial need and what type of financial aid? So the Pell Grant, any sort of grants from the state, for example, the Cal Grant, the Middle Class Scholarship, institutional grants, and then also subsidized loan and work study are considered need-based financial aid. So when you look at these numbers, your financial need, that's usually that whatever that amount is going to be made up of a combination of grants and then need-based loans and scholarship, potentially scholarship as well too. So from the student, so that still leaves an additional cost. So if what you're being offered in this need-based aid isn't enough to cover your balance, your tuition and fees, and your housing based on that student aid index. For the student aid index, if you a couple of ways of meeting that is that's where the non-need based aid comes in. The unsubsidized loan, potentially a Parent Plus loan, a private loan is an option to help meet the student aid index as well too. And something of note as well too is the FAFSA base and CADA is based on 2 years ago. A lot can happen in 2 years. So if there was some sort of loss of income, there's a process called special circumstance appeal that generally each school has their own timelines on when they process this and their own process as well too. They might ask for different documentation, they might have their own form, but it's a way after that initial offer goes out to potentially account and see if we can decrease that student aid index. So just going by the formula, the higher the SAI, the less financial need-based aid you would be offered. So depending on what those numbers are for the school you're going to, the offers can really vary. Wrong way, there we go. Okay, so at that point, when you look at your financial aid offer, you'll see that breakdown of that estimated cost of attendance, generally displays, in this case would be the SAI, and then the remainder amount, what your financial aid options are to meet that need-based financial aid, and then also the net cost, that difference for the non-need based options. So once these become available, you'll receive notifications from the campuses you're admitted to. From there, that's where that comparison comes in, comparing what was being offered by one school, what's being offered by other, to see what makes the most sense for you in making your admission decision. So you'll be able to determine how much gift aid you should be eligible for. and then see, will I need to borrow loans potentially to help make up any other costs that you're not able to cover for the school year. So ultimately, the goal is to make sure you have enough money to cover your costs for the school year. Something to keep in mind too is there's definitely variables as you move ahead. There's a process called verification. So if you are selected for this process, your school will let you know. There's also a notation generally on your FAFSA submission summary, which when you file your FAFSA, um, this year being the anomaly, you most likely received a confirmation email or something saying, "Hey, you've completed it." However, after that, and it's probably going to be sometime in March, is when the Department of Education is going to start sending out emails with your FAFSA, so you can log in and see your FAFSA submission summary. And that's going to have your student aid index, potential federal financial aid options, and more information than what you're seeing. Most likely, you're going to receive that before schools receive your FAFSA information. But schools will still receive that information separately to generate your financial aid offer. So really, once you get that offer, again, there could be changes. For example, if you decide to live on campus versus off campus, of what was originally offered. I know for different schools, different types of fees based on your residency status. If you have any outside money coming in, or if you are, as mentioned, selected for verification, if there are any corrections that needed to be made to your application, that may mean that what you're originally offered may be subject to change. So just something to keep in the back of your mind, but it will be the best information as of what's available at that time that the school has to give you an offer in helping to make your admission decision. Okay, so putting it together. So that's from reviewing your financial aid offers, really looking at that again, that cost of attendance, in particular the tuition and fees. Um, Again, the amount I know for the UCs, I'm sure for other segments as well too, is for the academic year, for generally it's the 9 months of the school year. So some schools may have the option to pay that up front or pay it in installments. I know for UC San Diego, we take that amount and split it into thirds for fall, winter, and spring. And then from there, adding all your gift aid. So you should see a breakdown of your federal, if you're eligible for federal grant, for state grant, and then any institutional grant. Something that you would just want to keep in mind, though, is that each school has their own funding. So you may receive a scholarship from one school that's not being offered by another. Definitely, I know scholarships are very competitive in their selection. So you may receive, for UC system, for example, a Regent scholarship from UC San Diego, but maybe not from another UC. So some funds or some grants and scholarships are specific to that campus. So they may not match exactly, depending on the funding that the school has. And then looking at the loans, so finding the costs, and then subtracting out the scholarships and grants you're being offered, and then looking at the remainder and using that to help determine if you would like to take out loans when the time comes. So subtract your financial aid totals from the cost of attendance to determine if you'll have enough financial aid to cover your school year, or in part your subtract out the gift aid, the free money, so to speak, and then seeing if, based on the remainder amount, if you plan to take out loans to help assist with any remainder amount. Generally, financial aid offers, in case for UCs, do include some loan and work study component as part of the offer. So just something, if you're admitted to a UC, just something to keep in mind. You'll see that as part of the offer. Oh, and this little calculator. There we go. Okay. And There we go. So some things to think of right now. If you filed your FAFSA, you've applied for admission. It's definitely a bit of a waiting game right now, but some things that you may want to consider ahead of time. If you plan on borrowing student loans while you're in school, if you're going to work during school, so pros and cons. I mean, if you're starting out, you're a first year student, you're just getting settled into the class schedule, life on campus, going to school. Do you want to start working straight away? Or do you want to wait a bit and get used to life on campus? Or is there just some things to consider as well too? And if you're going to thinking about if you're going to live on campus, are you going to live at home? As a way of saving costs as well too. I know when I was a student, I commuted from home for a while, then moved into an apartment later on. So every student has a different path, so something to think about as well too. And then do your research and use your financial aid offer to help you plan as well. So in terms of research and things in the meantime, you may not have your offers yet, but maybe check out the financial aid websites and the campus websites and admission sites for the schools that you're looking into, specific on the money side, what those costs are possibly going to be, just to get a general idea to get things moving before you get that offer. Oh, let's see. Oh no. No, we're going back. Okay, there we go. Okay, all right. So that being said, self-promotion for UC San Diego's financial aid office. We do have our social media on Instagram and formerly Twitter. So recommend, and it doesn't necessarily have to be us, but different schools have different social media as an additional supplemental way to share information or latest updates or things to be aware of as you're moving ahead. So if we kind of see some examples on the right, there of things that we've posted in the past and reminders. So we are required to send out notifications generally. I know for our campus, UC San Diego, your email address once you're a student, your UC San Diego email address is your main form of communication with the campus, but each campus has their own processes. But just if you want to kind of get a general idea, you definitely don't have to be a student to follow. You can definitely check us out there. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. And then questions. Even if you're not planning on going to UC San Diego, um, and we'll have, it looks like we've got some time for any questions that I might have popped in right now. You can definitely reach out to us. We're here to help. Our staff, and I know staff from different financial aid offices are attending a lot of workshops, giving presentations right now. We're very much aware of the situation right now, and it is definitely frustrating in how in the application not being available during the regular time period, and that this is impacting students and families alike. But do rest assured that we are here to help. And so even if you're not coming to UC San Diego, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to help out with any questions that we can. We have our website right here. If you go to our website, if you go to the Contact Us tab on our page, we have different ways of contacting us. The reason I recommend that is we do adjust our hours based on if there's I guess, especially during admission time too, if people have questions, we try to expand our hours based on need for the campus and for anyone outside of the campus who has questions and is trying to reach us. And then also we have our main email address, the finaid@ucsd.edu. So great ways to reach us. But that being said, I think that's it for me. I'm open to any questions that have popped in.
Okay, well, I'll encourage people, if you do have questions, now is a great time to put it in the Q&A, and I will ask Bronwyn out loud that question. We did get one earlier, and I think you kind of covered it, but it is a good question. Is there a separate application for scholarships for UC colleges, or is that kind of automatically part of your admissions application or FAFSA?
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah, just definitely a good question. And I know I talked pretty quickly too, but so for UC's, your UC admission application for your first year acts as your scholarship application. Generally, for subsequent years, there's a separate application as a continuing student. I work at UC San Diego and previously worked at UC Davis, and I'm assuming most UCs have a common practice. So usually during the fall quarters when the scholarship application as a continuing student becomes available. So you would apply annually, but during that first year, that admissions application does act as your scholarship. Also encourage you to look at other scholarship opportunities as well too outside of the UC application process as well. We have a lot of good information. I know the other UCs have good information on their website too, but we do have our scholarship unit that's put together a lot of good scholarship information. If you go to the fas.ucsd.edu and go to the scholarships tab, for non-UC or for other campuses, would definitely recommend again going to that website, doing that additional research. Usually there'll be a scholarship specific section that will give you instructions just to make sure you don't miss out on any opportunities.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. There's nothing else popping up. I have
Oh,
a question. I just in general, because I helped someone fill out a CSS profile yesterday, and it made me
oh.
think that's a financial aid form that's required by a lot of private and out of states. Do the UCs look at the CSS profile, or do they only look at the FAFSA or DREAM Act?
We only look at the FAFSA or DREAM Act application.
Okay.
I guess another item that I should mention that we didn't have on the slide is for the Cal grant. There is something called the GPA verification form. As a first year, generally high school counselors, there's probably someone in your office that has been submitting these GPAs electronically. For state grants, um, as long as you file the deadline right now, I want to say is April 4th. So you've got a little bit more time to file your FAFSA or DREAM Act application. But generally, as a high school senior, usually it's a high school counselor um, or someone within the high school administrative office that will submit. Usually it's a bulk GPA to the California Student Aid Commission, CSAC. That's the organization that administers the Cal Grant and the Middle Class Scholarship, so our California state grants. But yeah, the CSS profile, some schools do use that to determine financial aid eligibility. Like you said, the private schools and other campuses. So that's definitely a good idea to check out. Again, those financial aid websites, just to make sure that if your school's requiring it, that you get that completed as soon as possible. But for the case of UCs, FAFSA or the DREAM Act application are going to be those are the two big ones. And then usually it's your high school counselor administrative office will usually send over those GPAs to CSAC. And there's a scoring process CSAC uses to offer Cal grants to students as well too. And then when you fill out your FAFSA and DREAM Act application, right now you would usually put the school codes of the schools that you're interested in attending. So when they eventually, in March, when those are sent to the schools, that will get to the right schools. You will be able to make corrections during March. Around that time, I'm sure there'll be notifications that will go out to probably with the FAFSA submission summary confirmation that come from FAFSA, letting you know you can start making corrections, because you might realize, oh, I want to make sure I add UC San Diego, or make sure you're like, oh, I put in the wrong school code. I want to make sure this other school receives it. So you will have that time. It's just that function is currently not available. So if you forgot to put the school that you're admitted to or you apply to in right now, it's okay. You will have that opportunity next month when we get notifications of it to make corrections. That's just a key feature as well too. I think something on the UC side, I'm going to keep talking unless there's questions, is that a lot of schools use your social security number, if you have one, to match your admissions application and your school file with your FAFSA application. So when you filled out if you filled out a UC admission application and if you didn't put your social security number on it, it could potentially lead delays to matching up your application and generating an offer when the time comes. So if you think I'm on your UC admission application, I'm not sure if I entered my social security number, because it's not a requirement, because you don't necessarily need a social security number. You don't need one in order to be admitted to a school. You may want to log back into your UC admission application and check that. I'd say what some of the common issues we run across when it comes to putting offers together are if a FAFSA or DREAM Act application is incomplete, so maybe missing a signature or other information. If the social security number wasn't on your admission application, we weren't able to immediately match it up. And then also school codes as well too. So I don't think students have access to view this FAFSA submission summary to review the information that was submitted at this point. But when that does become available, that's something that when we're working with students and families and who've been admitted and the question comes up on why didn't you receive it, we'll usually research at that time or ask to confirm that the information that's on your FAFSA matches your admission application. So just a few things that you could potentially jump ahead of, so to speak, and check out.
Okay, so we have a question. It says, is the financial aid offer letter, does it provide a breakdown of costs for living at home, on campus, off campus, in case they're not sure what their living arrangements will be? Is that provided in the college's financial aid offer letter?
Potentially. I know based on the federal, if you're using the college financing plan template from the Department of Education, we display the estimated cost of attendance for, I think, for living on campus and then potentially living off campus. It should be included in the offer breakdown, and again, that's for the 9 months of the school year, so it isn't necessarily how much is being used to determine the amount per month. It's just an estimate of what students living on campus or off campus or at home are likely paying. So what your actual bill is will determine what you're actually going to be billed. So I know our housing office has different housing plans. So you can, if you want to see, well, how much will I actually be charged for housing at the time when offers are out, usually our housing office will give you could access a breakdown of what the housing fees are going to be. But in addition, if for some reason you only see one type or an on-campus, for example, cost of attendance, you should be able to log into the campus's website, or not even log in, access the campus's website. Usually if you Google fees and then the name of the school, you should be able to, or specifically to the financial aid website. Usually it's housed there. You'll be able to see a breakdown okay, I'm going to be living off campus. Well, how much is it approximately going to be? You should be able to see a breakdown of those three, on campus, off campus, or living with parent. Some schools have a different cost of attendance and averages as well too. If you're living in an apartment on campus versus living in the residence hall, each campus is different. So you may see multiple cost of attendance breakdowns on there. But if for some reason it's not on the offer, which it should be, or if you want to see if there's only one cost of attendance listed, you should be able to go to their financial aid website, and on the site or somewhere on the campus website, be able to see a breakdown of what the costs versus on, off, or living at home with your parent.
Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions. And so I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. A reminder to the people here that on the CalSOAP San Diego website where you signed up for this, starting tomorrow, there will be a copy of this recording so that you can go back and listen and fast forward and rewind if you want and get any information that you want from that. And if you have questions, you also have my email address and I will do my best to answer. But I want to thank you so much, Bronwyn, for presenting that information and answering questions. We really appreciate your time. And I will go ahead and end the webinar. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.